Tonight is the 24th of July, 2011, and we're on the 9th night of the Digha Nikaya talks. Tonight we come to Sutta number 14, Mahapadana Sutta. This is the start of the second book of the Digha Nikaya. This second book is called the Great Division, Mahavagga. This sutta, Mahapadana Sutta, is about Buddhas, the lineage of the Buddhas. But if we study this sutta, we find that this is probably a later sutta, because there are certain things inside here. It's a bit hard to accept. And also it uses some things from other suttas, piece them together, and make it appear like all Buddhas are the same. But in the Vinaya books, the Buddha was asked whether all Buddhas, their asana is the same, and the Buddha said no. Different Buddhas, the length of their asana, the Buddhist religion varies according to whether the Buddha teaches a lot of sutta and Vinaya or little sutta and Vinaya. Those Buddhas who teach a lot of sutta Vinaya, the sasana lasts a long time. Those who teach not much, then the sasana, the religion doesn't last so long. Okay. Sutta number 14, Mahapadana Sutta. Thus have I heard. Once the Lord was staying at Savatthi in Anatta Pindika's park in the Jeta Grove, in the Kareri Hutman, and among a number of monks who had gathered together after their meal, after the alms round, sitting in the Kareri pavilion, there arose a serious discussion on former lives, as they said. This is how it was in a former life, or that was how it was. And the Lord, with a purified divine ear faculty surpassing the powers of humans, heard what they were talking about. Getting up from his seat, he went to the Kareri pavilion, sat down on the prepared seat and said, "Monks, what was your conversation as you sat together? What discussion did I interrupt?" And they told him, "Well, monks, would you like to hear a proper discourse on past lives?" And they said, "Lord, it is time for that." "Well, Pharaoh, it is time for that. If the Lord were to give a proper discourse on past lives, the monks would listen and remember it." And the Buddha said, "Well then, monks, listen, pay close attention and I will speak." "Yes, Lord," the monks replied. And the Buddha said, "Monks, 91 aeons ago," aeons means world cycles, or kappa, "the Lord, Arahant Sammasambuddha, Vipassi arose in the world. 31 aeons ago, the Lord Buddha, Sikhi, arose in the world. In the same 31st aeon, before this Lord Buddha, Vesabu arose. And in this present fortunate aeon, the Lords Buddha, Kakusanda, Kona, Gamana, and Kassapa arose in the world. And monks, in this present fortunate aeon, I too have now arisen in the world as a fully enlightened Buddha, as a Sammasambuddha." Stop here for a moment. So, in another sutta, the Buddha mentioned that one night he probably didn't sleep. He didn't rest. He contemplated the past. He looked for a very long time. One aeon or one world cycle is very, very long. The Buddha said, hard to imagine how long it is. And for the Buddha to contemplate 91 world cycles, it probably took him the whole night. And he said in the 91 world cycles that he contemplated, only 6 Sammasambuddhas appeared. But as I mentioned, there are many Pacceka Buddhas at any one time. Like in the Isigili Sutta, there were 500 Pacceka Buddhas at one time on the Isigili hill or mountain outside Rajagaha. So that's why I always say 99.99% of Buddhas are Pacceka Buddhas who refuse to teach the Dhamma to the whole world. The Lord Buddha Vipassi was born of Katya race and arose in a Katya family. The Lord Buddha Sikhi likewise. The Lord Buddha Vesabu likewise. The Lord Buddha Kakusanda was born of Brahmin race and arose in a Brahmin family. The Lord Buddha Kona Gamana likewise. The Lord Buddha Kassapa likewise. And I, monks, who am now the Arahant Sammasambuddha, was born of Katya race and arose in a Katya family. The Lord Buddha Vipassi was of the Kondania clan. The Lord Buddha Sikhi likewise. The Lord Buddha Vesabu likewise. The Lord Buddha Kakusanda was of the Kassapa clan. The Lord Buddha Kona Gamana likewise. The Lord Buddha Kassapa likewise. I, who am now the Arahant Sammasambuddha, am of the Gotama clan. In the time of the Lord Buddha Vipassi, the lifespan was 80,000 years. In the time of the Lord Buddha Sikhi, 70,000. In the time of the Lord Buddha Vesabu, 60,000. In the time of the Lord Buddha Kakusanda, 40,000. In the time of the Lord Buddha Kona Gamana, 30,000. In the time of the Lord Kassapa, it was 20,000 years. In my time, the lifespan is short, limited, and quick to pass. It is seldom that anybody lives to be 100. The Lord Buddha Vipassi gained his full enlightenment at the foot of a trumpet flower tree. The Lord Buddha Sikhi under a white mango tree. The Lord Buddha Vesabu under a sal tree. The Lord Buddha Kakusanda under an acacia tree. The Lord Buddha Kona Gamana under a fig tree. The Lord Buddha Kassapa under a banyan tree. And I became fully enlightened at the foot of an asata tree. The Lord Buddha Vipassi had the pair of noble disciples, Kanda and Tissa. The Lord Buddha Sikhi had Abibu and Sambhava. The Lord Buddha Vesabu had Sona and Uttara. The Lord Buddha Kakusanda had Vidura and Sanjiva. The Lord Buddha Kona Gamana had Biosa and Uttara. The Lord Buddha Kassapa had Tissa and Bharadvaja. I myself now have the pair of noble disciples, Sariputta and Moggallana. The Lord Buddha Vipassi had 3 assemblies of disciples, one of 6,800,000, one of 100,000, and one of 80,000 monks. And these 3 assemblies were all Arahants. The Lord Buddha Sikhi had 3 assemblies of disciples, one of 100,000, one of 80,000, and one of 70,000 monks, all Arahants. The Lord Buddha Vesabu had 3 assemblies, one of 80,000, one of 70,000, and one of 60,000 monks, all Arahants. The Lord Buddha Kakusanda had 1 assembly, 40,000 monks, all Arahants. The Lord Buddha Kona Gamana had 1 assembly, 30,000 monks, all Arahants. The Lord Buddha Kassapa had 1 assembly, 20,000 monks, all Arahants. I, monks, have 1 assembly of disciples, 1,250 monks, and this 1 assembly consists only of Arahants. The Lord Buddha Vipassi's personal attendant was the monk Asoka. The Lord Buddha Sikhi's was Kemankara. The Lord Buddha Vesabu's was Upasanaka. The Lord Buddha Kakusanda was Vuddhija. The Lord Buddha Kona Gamanas was Sotija. The Lord Buddha Kassapas was Sabbamita. My chief personal attendant now is Ananda. The Lord Buddha Vipassi's father was King Banduma. His mother was Queen Bandumati. And King Banduma's royal capital was Bandumati. The Lord Buddha Sikhi's father was King Aruna. His mother was Queen Pabhavati. King Aruna's capital was Arunavati. The Lord Buddha Vesabu's father was King Supatita. His mother was Queen Yasavati. King Supatita's capital was Anupama. The Lord Buddha Kakusanda's father was the Brahmin Agidatta. His mother was the Brahmin lady Visakha. The king at that time was called Kema. His capital was Kemavati. The Lord Buddha Kona Gamana's father was the Brahmin Yanya Datta. His mother was the Brahmin lady Uttara. The king at that time was Soba. His capital was Sobhavati. The Lord Buddha Kassapa's father was the Brahmin Brahmadatta. His mother was the Brahmin lady Dhanavati. The king at that time was Kiki. His capital was Varanasi. And now monks, my father was King Suddhodana. My mother was Queen Maya, and the royal capital was Kapilavatu. Thus the Lord spoke, and the wayfarer then rose from his seat and went to his lodging. Stop here for a moment. So from here you can see that the facts here are a bit distorted because the Buddha here in this sutta says that my father was King Suddhodana, Raja Suddhodana. His father was actually Raja Suddhodana, but not the king, because the term Raja is used for the royal family. Just like now in Malaysia, we have many Rajas who are not the king or the sultan or sultan. And we know from the Majjhima Nikaya Sutta, what's the name of that sutta? Dhamma, monuments to the Dhamma. Dhammacetya, I forgot the name. But in that sutta, the Buddha said, it was said that the Buddha was a citizen of Kosala. And the king of Kosala was Pasenadi, and there's only one king in a country. And the Buddha belonged to the Sakyan race. And the king of the Sakyans, the chieftain of the Sakyans, because the Sakyans were not they didn't have a king. Their king was this king Pasenadi. But the clan, the chieftain was a man called what's his name? Badia. This Badia, he renounced, became a monk because of his good friend Anuruddha persuaded him. And within a few months of renouncing, he became an Arahant. So it's mentioned in the Vinaya books. So Badia was the chieftain of the Sakyans. So the Buddha's father was not even the chieftain of the Sakyans. He was just one of the many rich warrior clan Rajas. So that's why here it says the capital was Kapilavatu. But we know from the sutta that the capital of Kosala was not Kapilavatu. Kapilavatu was the place where the Buddha came from, the town of the Sakyans. Thus the Lord spoke. Soon after the Lord had gone, another discussion arose among the monks. It is marvelous, friends, it is wonderful, the Tathagata's great power and ability, the way he recalls past Buddhas who have gained parinibbana, having cut away the hindrances, cut off the road of craving, put an end to the round of becoming, overcome all suffering. He recalls their birth, their name, their clan, their lifespan, their disciples and assemblies connected with him. Being born thus, these blessed lords were such and such. Such were their names, their clans, their discipline, their Dhamma, their wisdom, their liberation. Well now, friends, how did the Tathagata come by the penetrative knowledge to which he remembers all this? Did some Deva reveal this knowledge to him? This was the conversation of those monks which came to be interrupted. Then the Lord, rising from the seclusion of the rest period, went to the Kareri pavilion and sat down on the prepared seat. He said, "Monks, what was your conversation as you sat together? What discussion did I interrupt?" And the monks told him. And the Buddha said, "The Tathagata understands these things by his own penetration of the principles of Dhamma, and Devas too have told him. Well, monks, do you wish to hear still more about past lives?" And they said, "Lord, it is time for that. Well, Pharaoh, it is time for that." If the Lord were to give a proper discourse on past lives, the monks would listen and remember it. And the Buddha said, "Well then, monks, listen, pay close attention, and I will speak. Yes, Lord, the monks replied. And the Buddha said, monks, 91 aeons ago, the Lord, Arahant, Sammasambuddha, Vipassi arose in the world. He was born of Katya race and rose in a Katya family. He was of the Kondanya clan. The span of his life was 80,000 years. He gained his full enlightenment at the foot of a trumpet flower tree. He had the pair of noble disciples, Skanda and Tissa, as his chief followers. He had 3 assemblies of disciples, one of 6,800,000, one of 100,000, and one of 80,000 monks, all arahants. His chief personal attendant was the monk Asoka. His father was King Banduma, and his mother was Queen Bandumati. The king's capital was Bandumati. And so monks, the Bodhisattva Vipassi descended from the Tusita heaven, mindful and clearly aware, into his mother's womb. This, monks, is the rule. It is the rule, monks, that when a Bodhisattva descends from the Tusita heaven into his mother's womb, there appears in this world with its Devas, Maras and Brahmas, its ascetics and Brahmins, princes and people, an immeasurable splendid light, surpassing the glory of the most powerful Devas. And whatever dark spaces lie beyond the world's end, chaotic, blind and black, such that they are not even reached by the mighty rays of sun and moon, are yet illumined by this immeasurable splendid light, surpassing the glory of the most powerful Devas. And those beings that have been reborn there recognize each other by this light and know. Other beings too have been born here, and this 10,000 world system trembles and quakes and is convulsed. And this immeasurable light shines forth. That is the rule. It is the rule that when a Bodhisattva has entered his mother's womb, 4 Devas come to protect him from the 4 quarters, saying, let no man, no human being, no thing whatever harm this Bodhisattva or this Bodhisattva's mother. That is the rule. It is the rule that when a Bodhisattva has entered his mother's womb, his mother becomes by nature virtuous, refraining from taking life, from taking what is not given, from sexual misconduct, from lying speech, or from strong drink and sloth-producing drugs. That is the rule. It is the rule that when a Bodhisattva has entered his mother's womb, she has no sensual thoughts connected with a man, and she cannot be overcome by any man with lustful thoughts. That is the rule. It is the rule that when a Bodhisattva has entered his mother's womb, she enjoys the 5-fold pleasures of the senses and takes delight, being endowed and possessed of them. That is the rule. Stop here for a moment. This part is hard to believe. Firstly, that the 10,000 world system trembled and quaked, and immeasurable splendid light surpassing the glory of the most powerful Devas shone. This is because before a Buddha is enlightened, he's like many ordinary beings or many Aryans. When Aryans are born, this doesn't happen because in this world there are still many Aryans. And then the second one, that when the Bodhisattva has entered the mother's womb, 4 Devas come to protect him. This also is a bit hard to believe. And then 1.18, it's all right. Then 1.18, 1.19. This 1.19 and 1.20 seem to contradict each other. 19 says that the mother has no sensual thoughts, but 20 says she enjoys the 5-fold pleasures of the senses and takes delight. It's the rule that when a Bodhisattva has entered his mother's womb, she has no sickness of any kind. She is at ease and without fatigue of body, and she can see the Bodhisattva inside her womb, complete with all his members and faculties. Monks, it is as if a gem, a beryl, pure, excellent, well cut into 8 facets, clear, bright, flawless and perfect in every respect, was strung on a blue, yellow, red, white or orange cord, and a man with good eyesight, taking it in his hand, would describe it as such. Thus does the Bodhisattva's mother, with no sickness, see him, complete with all his members and faculties. That is the rule. It is a rule that when the Bodhisattva's mother dies, 7 days after his birth, and is reborn in the Tusita heaven, that is the rule. It is a rule that whereas other women carry the child in their womb for 9 or 10 months before giving birth, it is not so with the Bodhisattva's mother, who carries him for exactly 10 months before giving birth. That is the rule. It is a rule that whereas other women give birth sitting or lying down, it is not so with the Bodhisattva's mother, who gives birth standing up. That is the rule. It is a rule that when the Bodhisattva issues from his mother's womb, Devas welcome him first, and then humans. That is the rule. It is a rule that when the Bodhisattva issues from his mother's womb, he does not touch the earth. 4 Devas receive him and place him before his mother, saying, "Rejoice, your majesty, a mighty son has been born to you." That is the rule. It is the rule that when the Bodhisattva issues from his mother's womb, he issues forth stainless, not defiled by water, mucus, blood, or any impurity, pure and spotless. Just as when a jewel is laid on muslin from Kasi, the jewel does not stain the muslin, or the muslin the jewel. Why not? Because of the purity of both. It is the same. In the same way, the Bodhisattva issues forth stainless. That is the rule. It is a rule that when the Bodhisattva issues forth from his mother's womb, 2 streams of water appear from the sky, one cold, the other warm, with which they ritually wash the Bodhisattva and his mother. That is the rule. It is a rule that as soon as he is born, the Bodhisattva takes a firm stance on both feet facing north and takes 7 strides, and under a white sunshade he scans the 4 quarters and then declares with a bull-like voice, "I am chief in the world, supreme in the world, eldest in the world. This is my last birth. There will be no more re-becoming." That is the rule. It is the rule when the Bodhisattva issues from his mother's womb, there appears in this world an immeasurable splendid light, etc. This is the rule. Stop here for a moment. So here in another list, which is quite far-fetched. I personally don't accept it. This one, like 1.21, says the mother can see the baby inside her, complete with all the members and faculties. So you must ask, what does she see it with? She hasn't developed the divine eye. On the flesh eye, you can't see through the skin. You see the baby inside. This one, after the Bodhisattva birth, 7 days after the Bodhisattva's birth, the Bodhisattva's mother dies and is reborn in the Tusita. This is supposed to be the case with our Bodhisattva, our Buddha Gotama or Sakyamuni Buddha. But it's doubtful whether this happens for every Buddha. And then it says here the mother gave birth to the Bodhisattva standing up. It's also hard to accept. And also that when he is born, the Devas welcome him first. And then also, so the Devas, when he is born, the Devas hold him so that he does not touch the earth and put him before the mother. This is also hard to accept. And also when he's born, he's stainless, not defiled by water or blood or anything. Also hard to understand. And this one, when he's born, 2 streams of water appear from the sky, one cold and the other warm. This is even harder to accept. This one, in the, I think Dhammapada commentary, the story is there. One of the stories is that the Buddha is supposed to have shown this psychic power that from his body cold and hot water came out. But this is just a story and looks like they have put it in here. Then 1.29, when the Bodhisattva is born, he can take 7 steps and proclaim, "I am chief in the world." That is very hard to accept. Monks, when Prince Vipassi was born, they showed him to King Banduma and said, "Your Majesty, a son has been born to you. Deign, sire, to look at him." The king looked at the prince and then said to the Brahmins skilled in science, "You gentlemen are skilled in science. Examine the prince." The Brahmins examined the prince and said to King Banduma, "Sire, rejoice, for a mighty son has been born to you. It is a gain for you, sire. It is a great profit for you, sire, that such a son has been born into your family. Sire, this prince is endowed with the 32 marks of a great man. To such, only 2 courses are open. If he lives the household life, he will become a ruler, a wheel-turning righteous monarch of the law, conqueror of the 4 quarters, who has established the security of his realm and is possessed of the 7 treasures. These are the wheel treasure, elephant treasure, horse treasure, jewel treasure, woman treasure, householder treasure, and counselor treasurer. He has more than 1,000 sons who are heroes of heroic stature, conquerors of the hostile army. He dwells, having conquered this sea-girt land without stick or sword, by the law. But if he goes forth from the household life into homelessness, then he will become an Arahant, Sammasambuddha, one who draws back the veil from the world. And what, sire, are the 32 marks? He has 1. He has feet with level tread. 2. On the soles of his feet are wheels with 1,000 spokes. 3. He has projecting heels. 4. He has long fingers and toes. 5. He has soft and tender hands and feet. 6. His hands and feet are net-like. 7. He has high raised ankles. 8. His legs are like an antelope's. 9. Standing and without bending, he can touch and rub his knees with either hand. 10. His male organs are enclosed in a sheath. 11. His complexion is bright, the color of gold. 12. His skin is delicate and so smooth that no dust adheres to it. 13. His body hairs are separate, 1 to each paw. 14. They grow upwards, bluish-black like collyrium, growing in rings to the right. 15. His body is divinely straight. 16. He has the 7 convex surfaces. 17. The front part of his body is like a lion's. 18. There is no hollow between his shoulders. 19. He is proportioned like a banyan tree. His height is as the span of his arms. 20. His bust is evenly rounded. 21. He has a perfect sense of taste. 22. He has jaws like a lion's. 23. He has 40 teeth. 24. His teeth are even. 25. There are no spaces between his teeth. 26. His canine teeth are very bright. 27. His tongue is very long. 28. He has a Brahma-like voice like that of the Karavika bird. 29. His eyes are deep blue. 30. He has eyelashes like a cow's. 31. The hair between his eyebrows is white and soft like cotton down. 32. His head is like a royal turban. Sire, this prince is endowed with the 32 marks of a great man. To such, only 2 courses are open. If he lives the household life, he will become a ruler, a wheel-turning righteous monarch of the law. But if he goes forth from the household life into homelessness, then he will become an Arahant, Sammasambuddha, one who draws back the veil from the world. Then King Banduma, having clothed these Brahmins in fresh clothes, satisfied all their wishes. And King Banduma appointed nurses for Prince Vipassi. Some suckled him, some bathed him, some carried him, some dandled him. A white umbrella was held over him night and day, that he might not be harmed by cold or heat or grass or dust. And Prince Vipassi was much beloved of the people. Just as everybody loves a blue, yellow or white lotus, so they all loved Prince Vipassi. Thus he was born from lap to lap. And Prince Vipassi had a sweet voice, a beautiful voice, charming and delightful. Just as in the Himalaya mountains, the Karavika bird has a voice sweeter, more beautiful, charming and delightful than all other birds, so too was Prince Vipassi's voice the finest of all. And owing to the results of past karma, the divine eye was present to Prince Vipassi, with which he could see for a league or yojana, day and night alike. And Prince Vipassi was unblinkingly watchful, like the 33 gods. And because it was said that he was unblinkingly watchful, the prince came to be called Vipassi. When King Banduma was trying a case, he took Prince Vipassi on his knee and instructed him in the case. Then putting him down from his knee, his father would carefully explain the issues to him. And for this reason, he was all the more called Vipassi. Then King Banduma caused 3 palaces to be built for Prince Vipassi, one for the rainy season, one for the cold season, and one for the hot season, to cater for all the fivefold sense pleasures. There Prince Vipassi stayed in the rainy season palace for the 4 months of the rainy season. With no male attendants, surrounded by female musicians, he never left that palace. Stop here for a moment. So here he describes 32 characteristics of a great man, 32 marks of a great man. This comes from the Indian tradition, the Brahmin tradition. Then monks, after many years, many hundreds and thousands of years had passed, Prince Vipassi said to his charioteer, "Harness some fine carriages, charioteer. We will go to the pleasure park to inspect it." The charioteer did so, then reported to the prince, "Your Royal Highness, the fine carriages are harnessed. It is time to do as you wish." And Prince Vipassi mounted a carriage and drove in procession to the pleasure park. And as was being driven to the pleasure park, Prince Vipassi saw an aged man, bent like a roof beam, broken, leaning on a stick, tottering, sick, his youth all vanished. At the sight he said to the charioteer, "Charioteer, what is the matter with this man? His hair is not like other men's. His body is not like other men's." And the charioteer said, "Prince, that is what is called an old man." And the prince said, "But why is he called an old man?" And the charioteer said, "He is called old, Prince, because he has not long to live." Then the prince said, "But am I liable to become old and not exempt from old age?" And the charioteer said, "Both you and I, Prince, are liable to become old and are not exempt from old age." Then the prince said, "Well then, charioteer, that will do for today with the pleasure park. Return now to the palace." "Very good, Prince," said the charioteer, and brought Prince Vipassi back to the palace. Arrived there, Prince Vipassi was overcome with grief and dejection, crying, "Shame on this thing birth, since to him who is born, old age must manifest itself." Then King Banduma sent for the charioteer and said, "Well, did not the prince enjoy himself at the pleasure park? Wasn't he happy there?" And the charioteer said, "Your Majesty, the prince did not enjoy himself. He was not happy there." And the king said, "What did he see on the way there?" So the charioteer told the king all that had happened. Then King Banduma thought, "Prince Vipassi must not renounce the throne. He must not go forth from the household life into homelessness. The words of the Brahmins learned in science must not come true." So the king provided for Prince Vipassi to have even more enjoyment of the fivefold sense pleasures, in order that he should rule the kingdom and not go forth from the household life into homelessness. Thus the prince continued to live, indulging in and addicted to the fivefold sense pleasures. After many hundreds of thousands of years, Prince Vipassi ordered his charioteer to drive to the pleasure park. And as was being driven to the pleasure park, Prince Vipassi saw a sick man, suffering, very ill, fallen in his own urine and excrement, and some people were picking him up and others putting him to bed. At the sight he said to the charioteer, "What's the matter with this man? His eyes are not like other men's. His head is not like other men's." And the charioteer said, "Prince, that is what is called a sick man." "But why is he called a sick man?" "Prince, he is so called because he can hardly recover from his illness." And the prince said, "But am I liable to become sick and not exempt from sickness?" And the charioteer said, "Both you and I, Prince, are liable to become sick and not exempt from sickness." And the prince said, "Well then, charioteer, return now to the palace." Arrived there, Prince Vipassi was overcome with grief and dejection, crying, "Shame on this thing birth, since he who is born must experience sickness." Then King Banduma sent for the charioteer and told him what had happened. The king provided Prince Vipassi with even more sense pleasures in order that he should rule the kingdom and not go forth from the household life into homelessness. After many hundreds of thousands of years, Prince Vipassi ordered his charioteer to drive to the pleasure park. And as he was being driven to the pleasure park, Prince Vipassi saw a large crowd collecting, clad in many colors and carrying a bier. At the sight, he said to the charioteer, why are those people doing that? And the charioteer said, Prince, that is what they call a dead man. Drive me over to where the dead man is. Very good, Prince, said the charioteer, and did so. And Prince Vipassi gazed at the corpse of the dead man. Then he said to the charioteer, why is he called a dead man? Prince, he is called a dead man because now his parents and other relatives will not see him again, nor he them. But am I subject to dying, not exempt from dying? And the charioteer said, both you and I, Prince, are subject to dying, not exempt from it. Well then, charioteer, that will do for today with the pleasure park. Return now to the palace. Arrived there, Prince Vipassi was overcome with grief and dejection, crying, shame on this thing birth, since to him who is born, death must manifest itself. Then King Banduma sent for the charioteer, who told him what had happened. The king provided Prince Vipassi with even more sense pleasures. After many hundreds of thousands of years, Prince Vipassi ordered his charioteer to drive to the pleasure park. And as he was being driven to the pleasure park, Prince Vipassi saw a shaven-headed man who had gone forth wearing a yellow robe. And he said to the charioteer, what is the matter with that man? His head is not like other men's, and his clothes are not like other men's. And the charioteer said, Prince, he is called one who has gone forth. Why is he called one who has gone forth? Prince, by one who has gone forth, we mean one who truly follows Dhamma, who truly lives in serenity, does good actions, performs meritorious deeds, is harmless and truly has compassion for living beings. Charioteer, he is well called one who has gone forth. Drive the carriage over to where he is. Very good, Prince, said the charioteer, and did so. And Prince Vipassi questioned the man who had gone forth. And the renunciant said, Prince, as one who has gone forth, I truly follow Dhamma. I live in serenity, does good actions, performs meritorious deeds, is harmless and truly has compassion for living beings. And the prince said, you are well called one who has gone forth. Then Prince Vipassi said to the charioteer, you take the carriage and drive back to the palace, but I shall stay here and shave off my hair and beard, put on yellow robes, and go forth from the household life into homelessness. Very good, said the charioteer, and returned to the palace. And Prince Vipassi, shaving off his hair and beard and putting on yellow robes, went forth from the household life into homelessness. I'll stop here for a moment. So here, this legend, even about our Buddha Sakyamuni, Buddha Gotama, the legend, the story is that the Buddha saw these four sights. A sick man, an old man, a dead man, and a renunciant, and that shook him up. But if you look at this story, sounds a bit ridiculous. Why must he go out and see an old man, a sick man, a dead man? As he grows up, he will see his relatives growing old. He will see his mother, his grandparents all growing old and becoming sick and dying. Just like all of us, as we go through life, we see our relatives and go through all these things. You don't have to go out and look for all these sights. So this is one of those things that sounds a bit ridiculous. And a great crowd from the royal capital city, Bandumati, 84,000 people, heard that Prince Vipassi had gone forth into homelessness. And they thought, this is certainly no common teaching and discipline, no common going forth, for which Prince Vipassi has shaved off hair and beard, donned yellow robes, and gone forth into homelessness. If the prince has done so, why should not we? And so monks, a great crowd of 80,000, having shaved off their hair and beards and donned yellow robes, followed the Bodhisattva Vipassi into homelessness. And with this following, the Bodhisattva went on his rounds through villages, towns, and royal cities. Then the The Bodhisattva Vipassi, having retired to a secluded spot, had this thought: "It is not proper for me to live with a crowd like this. I must live alone, withdrawn from this crowd." So after a while he left the crowd and dwelt alone. The 84,000 went one way, the Bodhisattva another. Then when the Bodhisattva has entered his dwelling, alone, in a secluded spot, he thought, "This world, alas, is in a sorry state. There is birth and aging or decay. There is death and falling into other states and being reborn. And no one knows any way of escape from this suffering, this aging and death. When will deliverance be found from this suffering, this aging and death?" And then monks, the Bodhisattva thought, with what being present does aging and death occur? What conditions aging and death? And then monks, as a result of the wisdom born of profound consideration, the realization dawned on him. Birth being present, aging and death occurs. Birth conditions aging and death. Then he thought, what conditions birth? And the realization dawned on him. Being or becoming conditions birth. What conditions being? Clinging or attachment conditions being. Craving conditions clinging or attachment. Feeling conditions craving. Contact conditions feeling. The six sense bases condition contact. Mentality and materiality conditions the six sense bases. Consciousness conditions mentality and materiality. And then the Bodhisattva thought, the Bodhisattva Vipassi thought, with what being present does consciousness occur? What conditions consciousness? And then as a result of the wisdom born of profound consideration, the realization dawned on him. Mind and body condition, or mentality and materiality conditions consciousness. Then monks, the Bodhisattva Vipassi thought, this consciousness turns back at mentality and materiality. It does not go any further. To this extent, there is birth and decay. There is death and falling into other states and being reborn. Namely, mentality and materiality conditions consciousness. Consciousness conditions mentality and materiality. Mentality and materiality conditions the six sense bases. The six sense bases conditions contact. Contact conditions feeling. Feeling conditions craving. Craving conditions clinging. Clinging conditions being. Being conditions birth. Birth conditions aging and death. Sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and distress. And thus this whole mass of suffering takes its origin. And at the thought, origin, there arose in the Bodhisattva Vipassi with insight into things never realized before. Knowledge, wisdom, awareness, and light. Then he thought, what now, being absent, does aging and death not occur? With the cessation of what comes the cessation of aging and death? Then as a result of the wisdom born of profound consideration, the realization dawned on him. Birth being absent, aging and death does not occur. With the cessation of birth comes the cessation of aging and death. With the cessation of what comes the cessation of birth? With the cessation of being comes the cessation of birth. With the cessation of clinging comes the cessation of being. With the cessation of craving comes the cessation of clinging. With the cessation of feeling comes the cessation of craving. With the cessation of contact comes the cessation of feeling. With the cessation of the six sense bases comes the cessation of contact. With the cessation of mentality and materiality comes the cessation of the six sense bases. With the cessation of consciousness comes the cessation of mentality and materiality. With the cessation of mentality and materiality comes the cessation of consciousness. Stop here for a moment. So here is the dependent origination of suffering. But here we find there are only 10 links. Only 10 links instead of the usual 12. And according to the commentary, it says here, only one lifetime is meant. If only one time is meant, then even with the 12 links, also one lifetime can be meant. Then the Bodhisattva Vipassi thought, I have found the Vipassana way to enlightenment. namely by the cessation of body and consciousness, cessation of mentality and materiality, consciousness ceases. By the cessation of consciousness, mentality and materiality ceases. Stop here for a moment. So here it says, I found the Vipassana way. This also shows that this is probably a later addition, because later monks, they always like to talk about the Vipassana way. By the cessation of the 6 sense bases, contact ceases. By the cessation of contact, feeling ceases. By the cessation of feeling, craving ceases. By the cessation of craving, clinging ceases. By the cessation of clinging, being ceases. By the cessation of being, birth ceases. By the cessation of birth, aging and death, sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief and distress cease. And thus this whole mass of suffering ceases. And at the thought, cessation, there arose in the Bodhisattva Vipassi, with insight into things never realized before, knowledge, vision, awareness and light. Then monks, at another time the Bodhisattva Vipassi dwelt, contemplating the rise and fall of the 5 aggregates of clinging. Such is body, such is arising, such is passing away. Such is feeling, such is perception, such is volition, such is consciousness, such their arising, such their passing away. And as he remained contemplating the rise and fall of the 5 aggregates of clinging, before long his mind was freed from the asavas without remainder. I'll stop here for a moment. So here he's saying that by contemplating the 5 aggregates of attachment, this Bodhisattva Vipassi attained enlightenment, which is the destruction of the asavas. Then monks, the Blessed Lord, Arahant Sammasambuddha Vipassi thought, suppose now I were to teach Dhamma. And then he thought, I have attained to this Dhamma which is profound, hard to see, hard to grasp, peaceful, excellent, beyond reasoning, subtle, to be apprehended by the wise. But this generation delights in clinging, rejoices in it, and revels in it. But for those who so delight, rejoice, and revel in clinging, this matter is hard to see, namely the conditioned nature of things, or dependent origination. Equally hard to see would be the calming of all the volitions, the abandonment of all the substrates of rebirth, the waning of craving, dispassion, cessation, nibbana. And if I were to teach Dhamma to others and they did not understand me, that would be a weariness and a trouble to me. And to the Lord Buddha Vipassi, there occurred spontaneously this verse, never previously heard. This that I have attained, why should I proclaim? Those full of lust and hate can never grasp it. Leading upstream this Dhamma, subtle, deep, hard to see, no passion-blinded folk can see it. And as the Lord Buddha Vipassi pondered thus, his mind was inclined to inaction rather than to teaching the Dhamma. And monks, the Lord Buddha Vipassi's reasoning became mentally known to a certain great Brahma. And he thought, alas, the world is perishing, it will be destroyed because the mind of Vipassi, the Blessed Lord, Arahant Sammasambuddha, is inclined to inaction rather than to teaching the Dhamma. So this great Brahma, as swiftly as a strong man might stretch his flexed arm or flex it again, disappeared from the Brahma world and reappeared before the Lord Buddha Vipassi, arranging his upper robe over one shoulder, and kneeling on his right knee, he saluted the Lord Buddha Vipassi with joined hands and said, Lord, may the Blessed Lord teach Dhamma. May the welfarer teach Dhamma. There are beings with little dust in their eyes who are perishing through not hearing Dhamma. They will become knowers of Dhamma. Then the Lord Buddha Vipassi explained why he inclined to inaction rather than to teaching the Dhamma. And the great Brahma appealed the second and the third time to the Lord Buddha Vipassi to teach. Then the Lord Buddha Vipassi, recognizing Brahma's appeal and moved by compassion for beings, surveyed the world with his Buddha eye. And he saw beings with little dust in their eyes and with much dust, with faculties sharp and dull, of good and bad disposition, easy and hard to teach, and few of them living in fear of transgression and of the world, of the next world. And just as in a pool of red, blue, or white lotuses, some are born in the water, some grow in the water, and not leaving the water, thrive in the water. Some are born in the water and reach the surface, while some are born in the water and having reached the surface grow out of the water and are not polluted by it. In the same way, monks, the Lord Buddha Vipassi, surveying the world with his Buddha eyes, saw some beings with little dust in their eyes, etc. Then, knowing his thought, the great Brahma addressed the Lord Buddha Vipassi in these verses. As on a mountain peak, a watcher sees the folk below, so man of wisdom, seeing all, look down from Dhamma's heights. Free from woe, look on those who are sunk in grief, oppressed with birth and age. Arise, hero, victor in battle, leader of the caravan. Traverse the world, teach, O Lord, the Dhamma, and they will understand. And the Lord Buddha Vipassi replied to the great Brahma in verse, Open to them are the doors of the deathless. Let those that hear now put forth faith. For fear of trouble I did not preach at first the excellent Dhamma for men, Brahma. Then that great Brahma, thinking have been the cause of the Lord Buddha Vipassi's preaching Dhamma, made obeisance to the Lord Buddha, and passing by to his right, vanished there and then. Stop here for a moment. So this part about how the Buddha Vipassi decided not to teach, and then later the Mahabrahma came to appeal to him, and he taught. This is just quite the same as what happened to our Buddha Gotama. So it looks like they just copied the whole thing from the suttas and the Vinaya concerning the Buddha Gotama for the Buddha Vipassi. Then the Lord Buddha Vipassi thought, to whom should I first teach this Dhamma? Who would understand it quickly? Then he thought, there are Kanda, the king's son, and Tissa, the chaplain's son, living in the capital city of Bandumati. They are wise, learned, experienced, and for a long time have had little dust in their eyes. If now I teach Dhamma first to Kanda and Tissa, they will understand it quickly. And so the Lord Buddha Vipassi, as swiftly as a strong man might stretch out his flexed arm, or flex it again, vanished there and then from the root of that tree of enlightenment, and reappeared in the royal capital of Bandumati, in the deer park of Kema. And the Lord Buddha Vipassi said to the park keeper, Keeper, go to Bandumati and say to Prince Kanda and the chaplain's son Tissa, My lords, Vipassi, the blessed Lord, Arhan Sammasambuddha, has come to Bandumati and is staying in the deer park of Kema. He wishes to see you. Very good Lord, said the park keeper, and went and delivered the message. Then Kanda and Tissa, having harnessed some fine carriages, drove out of Bandumati, making for the deer park of Kema. They took the carriages as far as they could go, then alighted and continued on foot till they came to the Lord Buddha Vipassi. When they reached him, they made obeisance to him and sat down to one side. And the Lord Buddha Vipassi delivered to them a graduated discourse on generosity, on morality, on heaven, showing the danger, degradation, and corruption of sense desires, and the profit of renunciation. And when the Lord Buddha Vipassi knew that the minds of Kanda and Tissa were ready, pliable, free from the hindrances, joyful and calm, then he preached the Buddha's special sermon in brief on suffering, its origin, its cessation, and the path. And just as a clean cloth from which all stains have been removed receives the dye perfectly, so in Prince Kanda and Tissa, the chaplain's son, as they sat there arose a pure and spotless Dhamma eye, and they knew whatever things have an origin must come to cessation. And they, having seen, attained, experienced, and penetrated the Dhamma, having passed beyond doubt, having gained perfect confidence in the teacher's doctrine without relying on others, said, Excellent Lord, excellent. It is as if someone were to set up what had been knocked down, or to point out the way to one who had got lost, or to bring an oil lamp into a dark place, so that those with eyes could see what was there. Just so the Blessed Lord has expounded the Dhamma in various ways. We go for refuge to the Lord, to the Dhamma. May we receive the going forth at the Lord's hands. May we receive ordination. Stop here for a moment. At that time there was no Sangha yet, so they did not take the triple refuge. They took the double refuge. And so Prince Kanda and Tissa, the chaplain's son, received the going forth at the hands of the Lord Buddha Vipassi, and they received ordination. Then the Lord Buddha Vipassi instructed them with a discourse on Dhamma, inspired them, fired them, and delighted them, showing the danger, degradation, and corruption of conditioned things, and the profit of Nibbana. And through their being inspired, fired, and delighted with this discourse, it was not long before their minds were freed from the asavas without remainder. That means they became enlightened. And a great crowd of 84,000 people from Bandumati heard that the Lord Buddha Vipassi was staying in the deer park of Kema, and that Kanda and Tissa had shaved off their hair and beards, donned yellow robes, and gone forth from the household life into homelessness. And they thought, this is certainly no common teaching and discipline, for which Prince Kanda and Tissa, the chaplain's son, have gone forth into homelessness. If they can do this in the presence of the Lord Buddha Vipassi, why should not we? And so this great crowd of 84,000 left Bandumati for the deer park of Kema, where the Lord Buddha Vipassi was. When they came to him, they made obeisance to him and sat down to one side. And the Lord Buddha Vipassi delivered to them a graduated discourse on generosity, on morality, and on heaven, showing the danger, degradation, and corruption of sense desires, and the profit of renunciation. And just as a clean cloth receives the dye perfectly, so in those 84,000, as they sat there arose a pure and spotless Dhamma eye, and they knew whatever things have an origin must come to cessation. And those 84,000 received the going forth at the hands of the Lord Buddha Vipassi. They received ordination, and the Lord Buddha Vipassi instructed them with a discourse on Dhamma. And it was not long before their minds were freed from the asavas without remainder. Then the first 84,000 who had gone forth heard, the Lord Buddha Vipassi has come to Bandumati and is staying in the deer park teaching Dhamma. And all happened as before, and it was not long before their minds were freed from the asavas without remainder. At that time, in the royal capital of Bandumati, there was a vast gathering of 6,800,000 monks. And when the Lord Buddha Vipassi had withdrawn into seclusion, he thought, there is now this great gathering of monks here in the capital. Suppose I were to give them permission, wander abroad, monks, for the good of the many, for the happiness of the many, out of compassion for the world, for the welfare, happiness of devas and humans. Do not two go together, monks, but teach the Dhamma that is lovely in its beginning, lovely in its middle, and lovely in its ending, both in the letter and in the spirit, and display the holy life, fully complete and perfect. There are beings with little dust in their eyes who are perishing through not hearing Dhamma. They will become knowers of Dhamma. But at the end of 6 years precisely, you are to come together to the royal capital of Bandumati to recite the disciplinary code. Then a great Mahabrahma, having divined the Lord Buddha Vipassi's thought, as swiftly as a strong man might stretch his flexed arm or flex it again, vanished from the Brahma world and appeared before the Lord Buddha Vipassi. Arranging his robe over one shoulder and saluting the Lord with joined palms, he said, "Just so, O Lord, just so, O welfarer. Let the Lord give permission to this great gathering to wander abroad for the good of the many, out of compassion for the world. There are beings with little dust in their eyes who are perishing through not hearing Dhamma. They will become knowers of Dhamma, and we too will do the same as the monks. At the end of 6 years, we will come together to the royal capital of Bandumati to recite the disciplinary code, the Patimokkha." Having spoken thus, the Brahma made obeisance to the Lord Buddha, and passing by to his right, vanished there and then. And so the Lord Vipassi, emerging from the seclusion of his rest period, told the monks what had occurred. "I allow you monks to wander abroad for the good of the many, for the welfare and happiness of devas and humans. Do not two go together, monks, but teach the Dhamma that is lovely in its beginning, lovely in its middle, lovely in its ending, both in the letter and in the spirit, and display the holy life, fully complete and perfect. There are beings with little dust in their eyes who are perishing through not hearing Dhamma. They will become knowers of Dhamma. But at the end of 6 years, precisely, you are to come together to the royal capital of Bandumati to recite the disciplinary code." And the majority of those monks that left that very day to wander about the country. And at that time, there were 84,000 religious residences in Jambudipa. And at the end of 1 year, the devas would proclaim, "Gentlemen, 1 year has passed, 5 remain. At the end of 5 years, you are to return to Bandhumati to recite the disciplinary code. And similarly, at the end of 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And when 6 years had passed, the Devas announced, "Gentlemen, 6 years have passed. It is now time to go to the royal capital of Bandhumati to recite the disciplinary code." And those monks, some by their own psychic powers, and some by that of the Devas, all in one day came to Bandhumati to recite the disciplinary code. And then the Lord Buddha Vipassi gave to the assembled monks the following precepts. Patient forbearance is the highest sacrifice. Supreme is Nibbana, so say the Buddhas. He is not one gone forth who hurts others, nor ascetic he who harms another. Not to do any evil, but cultivate the good, to purify one's mind. This is the Buddha's teaching. Not insulting, not harming, restraint according to the rule, moderation in food, seclusion of dwelling, devotion to high thinking. This the Buddhas teach. Once monks, I was staying at Ukata in the Subhaga grove at the foot of a great sal tree, and as I dwelt there in seclusion, it occurred to me, there is no abode of beings easily accessible that has not been visited by me for so long as that of the Devas of the pure abodes. Suppose I were to visit them now, and then as swiftly as a strong man might stretch his flexed arm, or flex it again, I vanished from the Ukata and appeared among the Vihara Devas, and many thousands of them came to me, saluted me and stood to one side. Then they said, "Sir, it is 91 aeons since the Lord Buddha Vipassi appeared in the world. The Lord Buddha Vipassi was born of Khattiya race and arose in the Khattiya family. He was of the Kondanya clan. In his time, the lifespan was 80,000 years. He gained his full enlightenment under a trumpet flower tree. He had a pair of noble disciples, Kanda and Tissa. He had 3 assemblies of its disciples, one of 6,800,000, one of 100,000, and one of 80,000 monks, all of whom were Arahants. His chief personal attendant was the monk Asoka. His father was King Bandhuma. His mother was Queen Bandhumati, and his father's royal capital was Bandhumati. The Lord Buddha Vipassi's renunciation was like this, his going forth like this, his striving like this, his full enlightenment like this, his turning of the wheel like this. And we, sir, who live the holy life under the Lord Buddha Vipassi, having freed ourselves from sense desires, have arisen here." In the same way, many thousands of Devas came, referring similarly to Sikhi and other Buddhas, as in verse 1.12. They said, "Sir, in this fortunate aeon now, the Lord Buddha has arisen in the world. He is born of a Khattiya race. He is of the Gotama clan. In his time, the lifespan is short, limited and quick to pass. It is seldom that anybody lives to be 100. He gained his full enlightenment under an asata tree. He has a pair of noble disciples, Sariputta and Moggallana. He has one assembly of disciples, 1,250 monks, who are all arahants. His chief personal attendant is Ananda. His father is Raja Suddhodana. His mother is Queen Maya, and his royal capital is Kapilavatu. Such was the Lord's renunciation, such is going forth, such is striving, such is full enlightenment, such is turning of the wheel. And we, sir, who have lived a holy life under the Lord, having freed ourselves from sense desires, have arisen here." Then I went with the other Vihara Devas to see the Atapa Devas, and with these to see the Suddasa Devas, and with these to see the Suddasi Devas, and with all of these to see the Akanita Devas. And there many thousands of Devas came, saluted me and stood to one side, saying, "Sir, it is 91 aeons since the Lord Buddha Vipassi appeared in the world," etc. And so it is, monks, that by his penetration of the fundamentals of Dhamma, the Tathagata remembers the past Buddhas who have attained final Nibbana, cutting through multiplicity, blazing a trail, have exhausted the round, have passed by all suffering. He recalls their births, their names, their clan, their lifespan, their twin disciples, their assemblies of disciples, these blessed lords were born thus, were called thus was their clan, thus was their morality, their Dhamma, their wisdom, their dwelling, thus was their liberation. Thus the Lord spoke, and the monks delighted, rejoiced at his words. That's the end of the sutta. This last part about the devas, the Aviha devas, Atapa devas, Sudasa devas, Sudasi devas, and Akanita devas refers to the 5 levels of the pure abodes. The pure abodes are Sudavasa heavens. The Sudavasa heavens are the pure abodes. And only the Anagamins, those who have attained third fruition, Arya, can be reborn in that heaven. So this sutta, as I mentioned, is not an important sutta. It's one of those suttas that try to praise the Buddhas. Every religion you find that they tend to praise the founder of the religion, and they very often go overboard. Just like in the Christian religion, they say that Jesus' mother was a virgin who gave birth to Jesus. So in the early Mahayana books also you find, they also say that the Buddha's mother was a virgin. So here also the other things are all a bit airy-fairy, as they say. How do you say in Chinese? What's the term in Chinese? The higher than normal. No. No. What's the term? Something to do with Pu, Putong, Putong, more than, higher than Pu. What do you call that? No. Li Pu. Li Po. Li Po. Li Pu. Yeah. Anything to discuss?
In the story of Buddha, they said that he went out and saw an old man, a sick man, a dead man, and a monk. So monks do exist. Even before the Buddha did not actually found this whole method of dressing in robes. I think monks do exist already.
Yes. All the time, like in India, you have what they call renunciants, different types of renunciants. Some don't wear robe at all, some are naked ascetics. Some will wear robes, different styles. It's a tradition, because to dye the robes, normally ascetics, they collect the rag robes from corpses, from the roadside and all that. And then they need to dye it a certain color to identify themselves. So they use the wood of trees, like the jackfruit tree. In Thailand they still do. They cut the jackfruit wood, jackfruit tree wood into pieces. They boil it until it becomes thick. Then they soak the cloth in there, you will soak the color. So that is sometimes they call it the ochre color. Ochre robes instead of yellow robes. It's not really yellow, it's like this, brownish.
Okay. This has a discrepancy between the earlier reality Nikaya and Nikaya. So if there's no consistency, then other people will be confused.
Yes, that's why you have to study more. When you study more, then you will find that like this sutta, talking about the 32 marks of a great man, it's not important. It doesn't help you to become enlightened. So you just ignore it, no? What is helpful, which is part of the Noble Eightfold Path, then we take notice. No? Sutras like this, you find that you can tell if you are experienced enough. If you are not experienced enough, then you can't judge. No? So you have to study the suttas again and again. Then when you can understand the suttas, then you know what is essential. Yes, even though it's recognized because it's passed through different hands for thousands of years, 2,500. So, like this, is the percentage of it is very low.
Yeah, but the thing is, estimating the Dhammavuddha's background, I think some few vendors and the big difference between king and the ordinary person.
So? I don't get your point.
So if let's say he's enjoying the life of peace and then he goes to the life, it's a bit different from a lay person, but it's a rich man's son.
As far as other Buddhas are concerned, you find in the other suttas, the Buddha does not talk about in detail about other Buddhas. So from this sutta you find that many things are actually from the Buddha's life story. So they have taken it from there and put inside here. That's why certain things also certain things you find it's hard to believe, like that the baby is just born and he can take 7 steps and proclaim that he's highest in the world and all these things. It's just logic. So as far as the life of luxury is in the Vinaya books. The Buddha said when he was young, his father was rich, and not only the Buddha, even other disciples of the Buddha, I think like Anuruddha, also described that his parents were very rich and built 3 mansions for him. So the Buddha also the same. The father built 3 mansions for him for the 3 different seasons. So it's just like some people come from a very rich family nowadays. That's all. Because you don't need it. During the Buddha's time, were there any Buddha statues? There are no Buddha statues. And Buddha statues appeared in India starting in Gandhara 500 years after the Buddha's passing away. And the Buddha foretold that his true Dhamma will last for 500 years, meaning it is unpolluted for 500 years. And after 500 years, you find the Mahayana books appeared, and also the Hinayana books like Abhidhamma and commentaries and later books like Visuddhimagga and all these things. So because of wrong view that people, instead of the Buddha's teaching is that we must strive ourselves. We can't pray to somebody for help. So the purpose of Buddha statues is for you to pray for help. So we don't pray for help, so why should we need Buddha statues? To pray to Buddha statues shows wrong view. That is because of India. The Buddhas are supposed to be born in India, and that is a special place. So we face that direction when we bow down. Better, to me, it's better to face India and bow than to face a statue and bow.
At the beginning of the talk, you mentioned that 99.9% is Pajika Buddha.
Yeah.
And only a very small amount would like to be some And from your other talk, you mentioned that the only difference between a Samasa Buddha and a Pacceka Buddha is that a Pacceka Buddha does not teach, but he knows exactly the same as the Samasa Buddha. Is there any supporting for that in the sutta? I mean, because I heard some others say that the Pacceka Buddha does not know exactly as a Samasa Buddha, and he cannot teach.
Is there any support for that in the sutta? But in the suttas and the Vinaya books, we find that the Buddha, our Buddha, Sakyamuni Buddha, he, as this last sutta mentioned, when he contemplated the beings in the world, he found that the beings in the world, we like to follow our tendencies, and our tendencies, meaning our greed, hatred, and delusion. And to cultivate the spiritual path, you are going against your natural tendencies, just like to swim upstream. To swim upstream the river is extremely difficult. To follow the stream and flow along the river and go downstream is very easy. So most beings, we want to choose the easy path. We just follow our tendencies and let the stream of life carry us. We don't know where we are going, we just keep going. But the spiritual path is to swim upstream, to go to the source. And that is very difficult. So even our Buddha, Sakyamuni, in the Vinaya books, it is mentioned that he determined not to teach. And then this Mahabrahma came down and pleaded with him, because this Mahabrahma was a monk in the previous life, under the previous Buddha, Kassapa. So he could recognize when the Sammasambuddha appeared. So he pleaded with the Buddha 3 times. Then the Buddha contemplated again and then decided to teach. That shows if the Buddha did not teach, he would have become a Pacceka Buddha. So he's the same person whether he teaches or he doesn't teach. Just that one moment he decides not to teach, another moment he decides to teach. So isn't it the same?
How come the previous Buddhas from example 91 ages before were in the same, they were Brahmins as well? How come?
No, according to the sutta we just read, some of them were from the Khattiya clan, the warrior caste, and some of them were from the Brahmin caste.
But did that exist 91 ages before as well?
That is hard to say. It might not be true, since we already said that a lot of things in this sutta cannot be believed. So probably that was just a conjecture.
If the Buddha knows this fact, then one person needs to be treated 3 times by
Mahabrahma.
Mahabrahma. He would know, he should know that if he doesn't teach, then no one else can teach.
Yes, he knows, but he also knows that every person has his time. Every person has his time. And there's an Indian saying, when the disciple is ready, the master will appear. So, because each person has our own time, when your time is due, you will meet the teacher. We all progress in stages. You see, even the Buddha taught the Dhamma. How many people became enlightened? How many people became Arya? How many people interested in his teaching? Not many. Like nowadays, you have the Buddha's words in the Nikayas, How many people bothered to read and understand? Very few. So it's because very few people are interested, that most Buddhas, even though they know there are some people are interested, but then to go around looking for disciples is not easy. Yeah, one day when you become enlightened, then you tell me whether you should teach or you should not teach. It will be like 99.9% of them. No, you won't teach. No.
In the Buddha Nikaya, they mentioned that the Buddha, when you see an old man, we want to contemplate that you get old one day. So they not really contradict the Buddha Nikaya.
Say again.
In the Buddha Nikaya, the Buddha mentioned that when he was young and he is an old person, he not contemplate that one day he was going to come old and he not shade of old person.
Yes. Yeah, I mentioned that it's ridiculous that he has to go out to see an old man, to see a sick man and all that. You don't have to go anywhere, you can see it in your own family.
Because in 1.7, you mentioned in the time of the Lord Buddha, the lifespan was 80,000 years. Then in the paragraph 2 and 5, after many hundreds of thousands of years, how can we live hundreds of thousands of years when the lifespan is 80,000?
Yeah, contradiction. Yeah, it's okay.
There are so many discrepancies in the suttas of our Buddha, the birth and also the origins of Buddha. What would you consider was to inform the fresh students the history of Buddha? What would be the best?
You see, these contradictions, they only appear in such suttas which try to praise the Buddha or the Bodhisattva and put it up on a high seat. But as far as the Dhamma is concerned, there's not much contradiction. When it comes to, the hardcore Dhamma, there's not much, there's hardly any contradiction you can find. It's only these praises of the Buddha and all that, these stories. These are stories, so you find this type of contradiction. So you can tell if you are well read in the suttas that this is so. Anyway, people who have listened to my Dhamma talks, some of them they wake up and then they realize, like Sunday school teachers teaching all the children. Then when the Buddha was born, he took 7 steps and proclaimed he's the highest in the world, and all this is a bit ridiculous. So, but then it's in their syllabus. They are asked to teach like that, so it's very hard. So you find that the people who draft all these syllabus for the children and all that, they are not knowledgeable about the suttas.
The books were written down 500 years after Buddha said, and Buddha said that 500 years after his death will be concluded. So how much concluded are they? How much concluded are they?
As I just mentioned just now, the pollution is mainly in the stories. As far as the Dhamma is concerned, there is not much pollution, except in the later books like Abhidhamma, commentaries. You find in the later books like we know that the Abhidhamma and the commentaries are later, because if you look at this period the 500 years after the Buddha's passing away, we find within this 500 years, you have this King Asoka in India. And King Asoka, he was a great supporter of the Dhamma. So he wanted people to know the Buddha's words. So he made these stone pillars. Like every kilometer by the roadside, he'll have these stone pillars. And he got these workmen to carve on the pillars the words of the Buddha. And it's mentioned now that they have dug up these pillars in India. It is mentioned that during Emperor Asoka's time, there were 5 Nikayas. Digha Nikaya, Majjhima Nikaya, Sangyutta Nikaya, Anguttara Nikaya, and the Khuddaka Nikaya. Khuddaka means the minor collection or the small collection. So during the Emperor Asoka's time, it was a small collection. But from Emperor Asoka's time until now, they have added books to it. So it has become a major collection. In this Khuddaka Nikaya, we find 6 books do not contradict the earlier Nikaya. So we accept 6 books as reliable, but not the other books in the Khuddaka Nikaya. This Japanese scholar, Professor Akira Hirakawa, he has done a lot of research, and he says that our Pali Suttas, among all the suttas, our Pali Suttas are the most pure from the Emperor Asoka's time until now. Is the most pure. And then if you study the suttas, then you find that there are some little pollutions like this sutta. All those that have stories, you don't bother about. Things like the 32 marks of a great man, not important at all, doesn't help us to become enlightened. So we don't have to believe whether it's true or not. Even if it's true also, we don't bother to remember it because it doesn't help us on the spiritual path. Shall we end here?